welcome to Dad Puzzles. Today I want to first express my genuine honor and excitement to have our next guest on our show. His expertise, his expertise and experiences is sure to bring incredible value to our audience. So thank you so much, sir, for joining our Dad Puzzles podcast.
Thank you so much, man, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. So Scott is a seasoned sales and marketing executive who is renowned for redefining sales, marketing, branding, and tech to market strategies. So throughout his career, he has successfully collaborated with executives and entrepreneurs, propelling their businesses to remarkable growth, often achieving 10 times the results. So from startups to large enterprises, Scott's expertise has left an incredible mark on iconic Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 brands. His work has garnered recognition with features in over 100 plus news sites and publications. As a global speaker, Scott is sought after at industry conferences, and his insightful articles have been showcased in prestigious platforms like Forbes, Wall Street, like Wall Street Journal, Hackathon, the startup, etc., etc. So, and like currently he hosts the Success Story podcast as part of the HubSpot podcast network, where he engages in enlightening interviews with inspirational individuals, mentors, and leaders. Additionally, he serves as the founder of a weekly business newsletter, continually sharing valuable insights with his audience. So, thank you so much for being with us today, sir.
I appreciate that. That's a really kind intro. I thank you for going through everything. You didn't have to go through everything, but
No, I
thank
do
you.
have I do have a friend of mine. He's very picky with. He likes whenever because he's a speaker as well. He likes people to read exactly word for word verbatim, his bio. So since then, I was like, okay, so I don't want to piss off anyone. So let me make sure I
Ah,
read everything.
you could call me a whole bunch of things. You wouldn't piss me off. That's don't worry.
Awesome, awesome. So where are you from, boss?
So I'm Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I'm not in Canada. I'm in Fort Lauderdale right now, but born in Toronto.
Okay.
Um, Raised in Canada. Most of my young life, I was actually in Ottawa, which is the
Okay.
capital of Canada. So like
Right.
think Washington. A lot of government. That's sort of where my family. That's where my family spent most of their careers in very safe, very safe jobs. My dad
Right.
worked for government. My
Mm-hmm.
mom worked for universities.
Right.
Went to school in Canada, and I guess it was around I don't know 25, 26,
Mm-hmm.
when I started working with startups. I've worked in a variety of different roles, different jobs. I was in the sales marketing side. 25,
Okay.
26, started working in startups. Really enjoyed the opportunity that startups afforded. A lot of hard work, a lot of wearing different hats. But then,
Right.
as anybody who has followed the startup journeys of founders or
Right.
early employees in startups, it can be super lucrative, super
Right.
exciting work. Obviously you're doing something that's probably never been done before, and at the same time, it can make you a lot of money if you do it right. So
Right.
that was sort of around the time when I pivoted from working in like big companies per se to working in startups,
Mm-hmm.
and I really enjoyed it. And I've had some successes along the way. Uh, I've worked in a variety of different industries, a lot of software, a lot of tech. More recently, I've worked in consumer goods,
Okay.
and along the way, I understood the power of, and this isn't a story that you'll hear from a lot of people, but understood the power of building a platform, building a personal brand, putting yourself out there, kind of like what you're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that created the podcast, that created the community, that created the social audience, that created the newsletter, that created all of that stuff,
Right.
which is going to be something that I probably do until the day I die because I love it.
Wow.
I love building that personal brand, and I
Right.
love speaking to awesome people.
Right.
I love teaching things that I've learned and other people have learned to the community that I've built.
Right.
And it also makes me better. It makes me a better operator in a business. It makes me a better investor. It makes me a better entrepreneur. It makes me a better founder. It makes me better at all those things, right? Because you have
Absolutely.
access to great people, you learn awesome
Yes.
stuff. So yeah,
Yes.
all in all, that's sort of my career in a very very small nutshell. But that's how I got to where I am today.
That is fantastic. And this is you've touched something very important about loving what you do, because a lot of folks, they end up doing what they do not love, so it becomes a stress in itself.
Oh,
Correct?
oh yeah. I mean, even the things, this is actually a very interesting point because even the things that I do that I love are still stressful.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the love that carries me through that stress. So
Mm-hmm.
everything you do in life
Mm-hmm.
that's worth doing,
Right.
to an extent, is going to have periods where it sucks.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing that is worth doing that is going to be 100% unicorns and rainbows and lollipops. We're talking
Right.
about building something, my own company, my own brand,
Right.
working in a startup I love,
Mm-hmm.
even raising kids. There's going to be
Right.
times when that shit sucks because I don't have kids
Right.
yet, but I have
Right.
friends that have kids, and it's like
Right.
not always fun.
Right.
So they
Right.
deal with a
Right.
lot of stuff. So
I
it's
you
like
know
that's what you got to get used to. You got to be you
Right.
got to psychologically you got to get over that hump.
Absolutely. And I guess the word I should have used was hate.
Yes.
Not necessarily stressful. Because they really hate their work. Like some people, they do
Yes.
not love them. That's something totally, not a good thing to have. So we encourage dads that are working their jobs that they do not love. I mean, they should. It's never late to change careers. They can
Hmm.
slowly merge into something that they love. Like spend more time a little bit. Additionally, maybe just a little bit of time every day to kind of learn about the career that they want to grow. Like go into. I've spoken with some people that they started their career very late. Like a lady, for instance, her daughter had tic disorders, and no doctors would help her. She started from scratch. She went to school. She learned about this. Now she's a doctor for it. So things can happen so late. Do not give up. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
this encouragement. This is a very good point. So maybe we can touch a little bit about like on the business side as well for now, because I want dads to be encouraged to learn from you as well. And so as a seasoned sales and marketing executive, what strategies have you found to be most like as effective in terms of the business growth and just the success?
Yeah. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the first one seems obvious, but
Hmm.
sometimes it's overlooked. The most
Right.
important thing when you're building a company or selling a product or
Okay.
aligning with a company that's selling a product as quote unquote an employee
Right.
is that the product's exceptional, is that the
Mm-hmm.
product has an unfair advantage in the
Mm-hmm.
marketplace. And I think that even if you are building a startup and you'll have your MVP, your minimum viable product, meaning it's
Mm-hmm.
not the final version that you want it to be because it will never be that. You'll always be trying to improve and iterate and whatnot. But
Right.
I think that having an incredible product that actually solves problems,
Mm-hmm.
which is like seems so basic, but
Right.
it's a very important piece of the puzzle. So
Right.
there's something called like product led growth or product led marketing and
Mm-hmm.
product focused companies. And really, what it just means is you're not trying to market a shitty product to the world or a
Mm-hmm.
bad product to the world. Like you have an incredible product that
Mm-hmm.
actually solves real problems that you believe in. And
Right.
then that's what you bring to the world. And then everything after that is quite simple. I mean, the best companies in the world that we know about
Mm-hmm.
always have the best product. Like it really does rise to the top when you have that incredible product. And this is something that if I'm looking at where I'm going to go in my career next,
Mm-hmm.
as a salesperson who has sold products that I believe in, and also I've sold products that I don't believe in,
Mm-hmm.
you'll never be successful selling a product you don't believe in.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never be successful selling something that you don't think actually works. So you
Right.
have to be behind a company and a product as an entrepreneur or as an employee that's
Right.
selling something that actually you believe in and that solves problems. And then all of a sudden, all the other things start to just work easier.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome. So this is a very good point. And so what happened? Like with your experiences with the Fortune 500 companies. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because this is something. Is not small. This is a huge feat, my friend.
So selling to large companies, I mean, when I was selling to large companies, usually when I've been selling to large companies, I've been in larger companies,
Mm-hmm.
which means you have more resources and more support,
Right.
which is always nice. But at the end of the day, it's a human selling to another human, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is one of the most important takeaways. Like even if there are complex buying processes, even if
Mm-hmm.
there's RFPs,
Mm-hmm.
even if you have to bring in a group of decision makers and multi-thread different stakeholders in the organization, meaning that I'm not just selling to a chief marketing officer, but I'm selling to a CMO and a CEO and a
Mm-hmm.
CFO, and I have to bring them all at the table to figure out the solution.
Right.
you are selling to another person or group of people. So I think that again, it comes down to how am I actually understanding
Mm-hmm.
the pain points that that organization is trying to solve for, and
Right.
how do those pain points affect the organization, but also how do those pain points affect the day in the life of the decision maker who's actually buying the product. So if I'm selling a piece of technology to a company, like
Right.
what are the problems that the CTO is dealing with on a day to
Mm-hmm.
day that would make
Right.
his or her job much easier that my product will alleviate, right? What are
There you
those
go.
problems that that person actually has to figure out? So I think that too often when we're selling B2B, business to business,
Mm-hmm.
especially in a very large enterprise format,
Mm-hmm. Right.
we forget that there's humans involved, and we
Mm-hmm.
forget that if I'm selling something, this could either make the person who's buying it look good or look bad.
Mm-hmm.
And if I make the person who's buying the product look good, all of a sudden my job as a sales rep becomes much easier. Now there's obviously much more complex items that you have to worry about. I mean, again, I mentioned one thing, multi-threading, which means instead of selling to like one person like
Right.
you would be doing in a smaller company, I have
Right.
to make sure that I have all the right buyers at the table. Or perhaps I have to take into account the fact that I'm selling to a company so big that they always go to RFP or request for proposal, meaning that they have to go get bids from like three different companies before they actually make a decision. All
Okay.
those nuances are important to consider, but
Right.
those things are like table stakes. Like when you start to sell at that level,
Mm-hmm.
those things are all pretty standard, and you'll be able to understand those and navigate those processes quite easily,
Okay.
because especially because you have a fair amount of support at that
Mm-hmm.
level when you're selling to a large organization and you're
Okay.
also part of a big company. But
Mm-hmm.
again, you can't forget the human element, which is the number one thing that is actually forgotten
Right.
more often than not at that level.
Okay. Okay. Thank
And
you.
that
Thank you.
transcends, right? That trickles down, right? There's the human element,
Mm-hmm.
the most important element in sales.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that applies at the Fortune 100, Fortune
Mm-hmm.
500, Fortune 5000, mid market, small market,
Right.
uh, selling to a mom and pop, selling to consumer. It's like always a human centric, customer first, customer focused
Right.
approach to sales.
Mm-hmm.
That's always
Right.
how it has to be. And if people forget that for even a moment, they'll stop being successful.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you. This is very important. Like we appreciate this insight. Because I guess like I thought maybe sometimes people can get so big, and maybe I thought they will forget that human element,
They
but I
do.
guess like
They look at people, they do forget the human element. They
Mhm.
totally forget the human element.
Wow. Well, thank
And
you for the
that's
time.
just not sales, right? We're
Hmm.
talking about like the whole commercial side of the business. They forget the
Hmm.
human element in their marketing. They forget the
Right.
human element in their sales conversations, in their discovery
Hmm.
calls, in the posts they post on, so like they forget the human element in all of it. And
Yeah.
ultimately, it's just a bad way to do business.
Right.
So you can, I mean, you can try and assume that I'm going to forget the human element, and I'm going to
Hmm.
pitch the benefits of my product, and I'm
Right.
going to
Right.
do the value prop, and I hopefully can convince them in some way to buy it without actually
Right.
caring about
Hmm.
what that person's issue is. But you're not gonna win that way. And actually, if you want to look at the data points to prove it,
Hmm.
in 2023, I mean, I
Hmm.
haven't sold in a B2B enterprise
Hmm.
context in a few years, but I mean, even
Okay.
back when I was selling B2B enterprise,
Right.
um, 70 to 80% of the information that the buyer and I'm sure this is also not just B2B enterprise, by the way, but 70 to 80%
Hmm.
of the information that the buyer researches.
Right.
So I go on social, go on the website, talk to my peers,
Right.
look at reviews, go to third party trusted websites that have unbiased reviews about the product or service.
Hmm.
70 to 80% of that information, I get that before I even talk to a sales rep for the
Hmm.
company that I'm buying a product or service from. So
Hmm.
80% of my information is already in my head before I even talk to you and you're selling me the product.
Right.
So, I mean, you have to understand that like what you're telling me, what you're trying to push on me is a very small percentage of what actually influences my buying decision. The only piece that you really, because all the information is out there at what a
Right.
certain product or service does, the
Right.
biggest point of leverage you have and the biggest point of differentiation you have as a seller for a company versus a competitor that's also trying to sell to a buyer
Right.
is that you actually understand the things that I'm going through in my day to day, because
Hmm.
all the information is already out there. So I'm
Absolutely.
not usually learning much new when I talk to you. But if you can find a way to tailor it to like how my life is going right now, and when I walk in and I'm a CTO of a company and the CEO is yelling at me because whatever our servers are going down, and you can understand that and you can sell me a problem that fixes that, all of a sudden, wow, that's who I'm going to buy from.
Right, right. Absolutely. And I mean, in terms of healthcare, first can jump in as well and add more points. But something that sticks out at the moment for me is the patient experience. So a lot of times, some hospitals, they will get in trouble because of the patient experience. Folks that have been treated in the hospitals, they can rate them badly because of what this, how they've been treated. So no matter how much the advertisement is done by the hospital systems, if the like you mentioned, like a person to person, is not there, like the human touch is not there, then the whole marketing is useless.
100% correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief. So how has the media exposure influenced you? Because you've been in so many media outlets, my friend. How has that done to yourself in terms of your businesses, or just as a person? How has that experience just
Impacted?
Yes.
I think that I'm a firm believer in personal brand, obviously.
Right.
So I'm obviously very biased. I think that everybody to some degree should build a brand around themselves, allowing them to broadcast to the world what they're an expert in.
Right.
And so how does it impact me? So when I built my personal brand, I didn't do it with a specific focus on a company, because I knew that I wanted to have a brand that transcended the exact place that I was working at the time. And I wanted to create something that in the future I could monetize or leverage. And I really looked at like the Gary Vee model of brand building, right? So you have this incredible brand, and then you can launch companies, or you can use it to reach an audience, or there's various ways you can use it. Gary Vee, for example, he's launched like not VaynerMedia, but like Empathy Wines and Vayner Sports and his NFT project, all against his audience, right? So now you have this audience, you can use it for whatever. And my goal was, I'll build the audience and I'll communicate tons of value and I'll build a community. And then if I want to use it for something, it's right there. There's all these people that have been listening and consuming information, and I've been helping these thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, whatever people for the past 10 plus years. So when I want to sell something to them, they trust my recommendation. And that's the end goal, should always be helping, but of course at some point you can monetize as well. So how does the exposure help? I mean, any role that I took on, or any company that I tried to start, or any product that I tried to sell, all of it was immediate. Anytime I tried to raise money, anytime I reached out to somebody like a high level individual on LinkedIn to try and get a call, like, it just makes everything easier, because you have all this social proof that you are who you say you are, and you have a good reputation behind you. So when, it doesn't guarantee anything, but it makes things easier. So if I want to go raise money from an investor, they look me up. Oh, okay, Scott's like, he's done something. He's not some no name. He's like trying to put himself out there. I've listened to a few of his things. I like the way he thinks. I like the way he communicates. I like the way, he looks at businesses and strategy. All of a sudden I have a positive impression of this person, because people will always create an impression of you, and they'll always have an idea of who you are, whether or not you like it. Just by a quick Google search. I mean, this is how we function, unfortunately. So it's, in my opinion, better to control the narrative by creating that content and creating the brand that I want people to see. So everything that literally, I mean, looking for a new job. Right now, after my last company, so I was CRO of a software company that was acquired. I was tapped on the shoulder to be CEO of a consumer goods company. I'm sure, the online persona helps with that. Being asked to be brought onto podcasts like this one, being asked to speak on stage. I think the largest stage that I've spoke on to date was Inbound, which is like 70,000 people. Not all for me, obviously, but like 70,000 people go to Inbound every year, and then HubSpot's asking me to speak on a stage. So I mean, the podcast, the putting yourself out there, that's what got me on that stage. There's other ways to get on that stage too. I mean, there's leaders of multi-million-dollar brands, companies that have IPO, but that was like my way to get onto the stage, right?
Okay.
Build the community, and then the opportunities come.
Oh, that's awesome. And this has to be like you mentioned. First, the love is there, and you're not shy. You're going for it. But I think because I've met some folks that they want to get into the industry, however they're still shy. They to put their name out there. Like they say, oh no, like I just use my nickname. Excuse me. This is how this is how it works right now. Not
I think that that's a valid point because it's really stressful to put your own name out there and to put
mhm,
yourself out there.
right.
I don't think there's an easy way to do it except to just start.
Hmm.
And also, even when you start, I mean, it's not like it's ever going to be like, I can't remember whose quote this was, but I think it was Jim Carrey or somebody. He said, "I wish everybody could be famous and rich to see like
Hmm.
how it's not always what it's cracked out to be." And that's a bastardization of the quote, but that's essentially in
Hmm.
essence, even when you put yourself out there, the more famous you get, the more stressful it is, the more hate you get, the more everything.
Right.
But there's a benefit to it. So
Hmm.
I think that yeah, it's going to be stressful, but you
Hmm.
start to understand that all the things that you should have listened to in the first place about not paying attention to other people's opinions are very correct.
Right.
I mean, you listen, you put out, feelers, you get some feedback as to what you're doing. Is it good? Is it bad? But
Right.
ultimately, not everybody will like you, and that's okay.
Right.
And unless there's like very, very good critique, like if so, I'll give you an example. Like yesterday, somebody said on my Instagram, like,
Hmm.
"Oh, it was so annoying listening to the last podcast because the ads like interrupted a thought halfway."
Right.
That's
Hmm.
that's very good feedback for me
Right.
because I have to speak to my editors. I have to make
Hmm.
sure that the way they edit is done in a proper way so that the ads
Right.
aren't annoying. But
Right.
that's constructive. There's a
Hmm.
lot of unconstructive, like malicious stuff that always
Right.
happens that has no bearing on me. And usually,
Right.
this is very real. The people that are doing better than you never care about what you're doing. It's always the people
Hmm.
that aren't doing as well as you that are the loudest. And those are
Right.
unfortunately the ones that go on your social, DM you, message you, whatever. Ignore
Hmm.
it because it really
Right.
doesn't mean anything. It doesn't impact you. It doesn't change your life in any way.
Hmm.
So be okay that that's going to eventually happen, but
Hmm.
also look at the potential upside.
Absolutely. And how long it took you to get that realization? Because sometimes folks they will have like this, oh, I don't want to do this, and then they do it finally, and then they realize, oh man, I should have started this early. Why did you have this situation?
Um, so when I got the realization that I should have started this earlier, or
All right, right,
um, I think the day that I started, I realized that I should have done it earlier.
big time, yeah.
Like for me, I don't always approach things the same way as everybody. Like when I
Hmm.
start something, I'm so committed to it, almost
Hmm.
to a fault that I have trouble stopping. In
Nice,
some cases, even if it's not successful.
right.
Um, but I think that attitude and that personality allowed me to start and then never look back.
There you
And
go.
actually, candidly, I think the people that have that personality of being able to start and never look back are the people that are usually the most successful because they don't second guess themselves again and again and again.
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree with you, my friend. So far, how has been the experience with the success story? I mean, this show is so amazing. You have all these greats on your show. So, what is the one that particularly left you like this biggest
Mm.
impact?
So, Success Story has been an incredible experience because
Right,
outside of being a great way to build the brand, it's
right,
long form content. It allows
right,
me to take that long form content and put it across all the different social platforms, kind of like what we're doing now. You can
right.
chop this up into 50 different pieces, right? All the shorts,
Absolutely, yeah.
reels, TikToks, all that
Yep.
shit.
Hmm.
Outside of that, I
Hmm.
mean, it's letting you sit down with all these cool people and talking to them for like an hour and a half, a couple
Hmm.
times a week. Like, what
Right,
other job in the
right,
world affords you that opportunity? Not
right,
many.
right.
Not
That is
many,
true.
right? So
That is
it's
true.
yeah, it's a personal brand strategy. But if you don't think I learn
Hmm.
a ton of shit from the
Right,
people that I talk to, you know what's up.
right.
So that being able to have access
Hmm.
and talk and chat and sit down with some of the most incredible, intellectual,
Hmm.
sophisticated, successful individuals in the world is by far
Hmm.
the biggest benefit. No amount of money or
Hmm.
fame or
Right.
followers or anything could ever compare to being able to tap into some of the most interesting brains in the world.
Awesome, awesome. Especially when you have their stories, how inspiring it is, how they're you can relate to where they start from, and this is this is beautiful, you know.
You relate to where they start from. You
Hmm.
start to see threads of what allows them to be successful. You
Right,
also understand that nobody's journey is perfect and like
right,
everybody's gone through super stressful periods in their life, which just
right,
sort of normalizes your own stress.
right.
All these things not only teach me a lot, but they really candidly, I mean, I
Hmm.
listen to my own shows obviously, but I also listen to podcasts for this reason because
Hmm.
it helps normalize my own lived experience. It
Right,
helps me normalize, oh, business isn't going well. Okay, we
right,
got to figure it out. But you know what? People have made much bigger mistakes that have been much more expensive
right,
in much bigger companies, and
right.
they've survived. So you know what? I'll be okay at the end of the day. Stressful right now, but it helps you push through these really dark moments in your life that everybody experiences. To
Okay.
listen to people who've done it before. And you also asked what was like the most impactful episode.
Hmm.
I would say there's been a lot,
Hmm.
obviously. I will give you the most impactful answer to a question
Hmm.
that I have asked. I ask sort of some similar questions. I always ask like what would you tell your 20-year-old self? I ask what does
Right.
success mean to you? But
Hmm.
there's one answer, and it actually funny enough came from Anthony Scaramucci, which
Hmm.
he was the guy who was like Trump's like VP communications director for like 12 days
Right,
or
right, right,
whatever.
right,
It
right,
was
right,
like a
right.
very funny,
Hmm.
interesting story. Now he's obviously a really successful finance guy
Hmm.
and whatnot.
Right.
And he told me something that actually really resonated.
Hmm.
It's been repeated a few times, but he's like the first person to say it on the show. So
Hmm.
he said that his sort of secret to success
Hmm.
is his trust in himself. So if he was going to take everything away that he
Right.
has right now, and he's worth
Hmm.
probably several $100 million at this point,
Hmm.
and he
Right.
manages, I'm sure, over $1 billion in some of the funds that he manages,
Right.
he was going to take everything away, and it was going to be him in like a studio apartment in Brooklyn,
Right.
with nothing but like the T-shirt on his back.
Right.
He has absolute confidence that he could do it again, from scratch with no connections, no network, no money. And I'm like, holy shit, that is
Hmm.
the most powerful mental thought place, thought process to have,
Right.
the mental place to be in,
Right.
that you trust in yourself that much that you
Right.
could just everything taken away, you could repeat success. And I think that mindset,
Hmm.
it may not, I'm not sure if it is as powerful to some people as it is to me, but for me, that is like the secret. It's the
Hmm.
secret to success. It's the
Right.
secret to success, meaning like financial success, not like family success and freedom from working, but like building a business, being successful in your career. I think a lot of it has to come down to, do I trust myself to do this? And then
Hmm.
having absolute trust in yourself to execute on the things that you have to do.
Right.
And I think that if more people had that faith in their own abilities,
Hmm.
they would take more risks and they would end up being successful.
Oh, awesome! And I think you had mentioned this in your Instagram about how it is important for people to have the mindset. This is more
Hmm.
important to have the strength. Like what you just described, because it's not about money. Like I will have that quote with you later on. But so what so far from your experience being in like an international speaker, what is some the trend that you're noticing now, um, worldwide, so far from your experience in terms
Trends
of
in
sales,
trends in what, in business and
like sales and marketing and so far, like what kind of trends are you noticing? Is there like a new trend or something that is
what are new
different?
trends?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I would say the things that it's interesting. So I wouldn't say they're new trends, but
Mm-hmm.
they're just as important.
Mm-hmm.
So we sort of touched on a couple things that make for a good company, right? Like,
Right, right.
being a product focused company. I
Mm-hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
that's not necessarily a trend, but it's important.
Right.
Um, I think that an emerging trend is brands and individuals trying to be louder on social media.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue is that social media, and which at one point was considered alternative media,
Mm-hmm.
is so saturated that brands starting and people starting to try and build an audience, they end up being exactly like the last person. So the internet has democratized access to building a brand and becoming famous, but it's also homogenized it, meaning that everybody seems to do it the same way. So it's made access very easy. I mean, I can just go on my computer, and if I'm good enough at creating content
Right.
and teaching stuff over, I don't need to, for example, like sign a deal with a movie star, with a production company and be in a movie
Right.
to be famous. Like I can actually do it myself.
Right.
But with that low barrier to entry, it means that everybody sort of copies each other. So the emerging trend or the successful way to look at alternative media, social media, podcasting, whatever it is to be uh, is to be the trend has to be you. What I mean by that is the only way to be successful in an environment like the internet where everybody has access to producing their own personal brand is to
Right.
be so unique that you
Right.
differentiate yourself, that you are a culture of one of one. You are one of one. No one else
Right.
can be like you. Nobody else can create content like you because you are the content.
Right.
You are the brand. And I think that that is a trend that some people nail, and the most successful individuals in the world, like a Gary Vee is a Gary Vee. He's one of one,
Right.
right?
Right.
If we look at Alex Hermosi is one of one. Grant
Right.
Cardone is one of one.
Right.
Elon Musk is one of one. All these people are one of one. They cannot be replicated because there's nuances of their personality that they let shine through on social. So to be successful in social media, you have to be one of one, meaning that you have to be okay not just putting yourself out there, but putting yourself out there without a filter, with nothing but your honest raw self, because that's what people will actually like or dislike, which is
Right.
fine.
Right.
But the people that like it create the community. That's what
Right.
allows you to be successful online. So look at, for example, I mean, I mentioned a couple people that do this well. Look
Right.
at Duolingo. Duolingo is a brand that wasn't just a copy of the last brand. It
Yeah.
was a beautiful interpretation of a language learning app in a like big bird, whatever it is, costume mascot of a Duolingo bird that does ridiculous things around the office, and then that company goes viral because they're one of one. No one else can be a big green bird mascot
Right.
dancing around on TikTok, but Duolingo can be that, and they
Right.
killed it. And I'm pretty
Right.
sure whoever, I think I can't remember the name of the woman who came up with that campaign, but she's like won awards for marketing at this point because they
Right.
went so viral, and they're a language learning app that has like one of the largest TikTok followings. That's a one of one example. So that's a trend that's a newer trend, but very important, that I think you have to consider. You have to really consider that purposefully, meaning that Gary Vee didn't think, oh, I'm going to be one of one. He just thought, I'm just going to be me. But a
Right.
lot of people have trouble thinking like that. So I think that when you start, day one, day zero, think like that. Just be you, be authentic, but truly be authentic. Not just like you throw a swear word in here or there. It's like you talk about everything. So we talk about business, we
Right.
talk about family, we talk about
Right.
kids, we talk about
Right.
things I'm stressed about, or maybe I talk about the food I eat, the hobbies I have. That's why vloggers on YouTube are so popular because
That's
they're
right.
one of one. They document their whole day.
That's fantastic. I think you have a good, very good point. And another thing, and I'm noticing maybe folks they become not themselves because they get disrupted by input from family or close friends. So maybe you have to develop a way to shut that down somehow because otherwise you become because
Yeah.
they're trying to sometimes they're looking out for you. They think maybe that's tacky or that's not cool, but in reality, like you mentioned, is that uniqueness. You need to be the one on
It
one.
is your uniqueness. It's every single thing that embodies who you are on a day to day. Like even like my even my dad.
Hmm.
My dad told me the other day, he's like, it is so weird seeing you on YouTube.
Hmm.
But I'm like, I mean, like I can't like I
Right.
mean, he'll never be somebody who's gonna want to build a personal brand, and he appreciates that I'm doing stuff that's probably wildly outside his comfort zone, but that's cool. He
Right.
doesn't care. But I mean, like, yeah, family will always, I mean, if you're pushing boundaries, family's never going to 100% understand what you're doing. But that's
Hmm.
okay.
Right. Right. Right.
That's totally okay.
There you go. Now I see. That's a very good point. Because a lot of times, like they can have a good point. Like from their perspective, they're trying to look out for you, but I think dads need to know that, okay, you have to look at the bigger picture in terms of you have to be unique. So if it's as long as you're not naked or you're not doing something
Listen,
illegal,
if
I
you're
think
not doing anything illegal or
right,
offensive or
right,
whatever, yeah, don't dance around naked. Don't do
right,
illegal stuff. Don't make somebody feel less than. Don't be,
right. Don't offend
racist,
people, right?
sexist,
There
whatever
you
it is.
go.
Don't do any of that shit.
Right.
But outside of that, be
Hmm.
you.
Awesome, awesome. Now, how do you? Because for a person like yourself, with all these hats that you have to put on, how do you manage the time to take care of yourself? Like that personal time. How do you take? How do you take?
Mm.
Like rejuvenate. Uh,
So it's not easy, and I want to be super clear about this. So I have like
Right.
routines and I have things that I do that I'll talk to you about, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like never perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that too many people are too polished online,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll listen to gurus that seem to have all their shit together, and
Right.
they say that the 5 a.m. club or the I shut my phone off whatever 2 hours because I don't
Right.
believe in blue light,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't drink coffee anymore, or I don't drink alcohol, or I
Mm-hmm.
whatever I do a cold plunge every morning. All that stuff is whatever. The point
Mm-hmm.
is nobody has it 100% of the time together,
Right.
and if
Right.
somebody tells you that, they're lying.
Right.
They're for sure lying because nobody's life is perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and also not all that stuff is even required to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't like I'm pretty sure like Warren Buffett like drinks a ton of Diet Coke, and I don't think he does cold plunges every day. The point is,
Right.
you don't have to do all this gimmicky stuff to be
To be
successful. You have to
successful.
focus
Yep.
on the things that you enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
that positively impact your life, that
Right.
you notice some benefit of. So what do I do? So a couple sort of very strategic things that I do in my day. I mean, I mentioned before we started recording, like the urgent, important matrix. I
Right.
do actually do my most important tasks in the morning, or also, which is like the eat the frog mentality. So, like
Mm-hmm.
stuff that is like the most stressful,
Mm-hmm.
gonna move the needle the most.
Right.
I do that. I try to do that before people start calling me, emailing me, or I'll do that super late at night. So sometimes after dinner, I'll spend some
Mm-hmm.
time like instead of like watching TV, like maybe like an hour and a half, like doing like very important things that are going to move the needle in my life or in my
Right.
business. So I do urgent, important, plus I also time block.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to time block because I run a company, I do a little bit of investing, I
Mm-hmm.
also do my podcast personal brand. So I have to
Right.
time block stuff
Mm-hmm.
because there's something like whenever you switch tasks, you're doing context switching,
Mm-hmm.
which basically erodes your energy levels and your focus and your attention. So
Right.
you should not be switching tasks too many times throughout the day. Even
Right.
if you are thinking that you're a great multitasker, there's a lot of science that shows that it's impossible to multitask effectively. So every
Right.
time you switch tasks from like podcasting to jumping on a call for one business to looking at an investment portfolio, like that's all context switching. It takes a lot of mental bandwidth. It wears you down. It's not
Mm-hmm.
good. You won't be as effective.
Mm-hmm.
So don't do it. So you have to time block your day into,
Right.
okay, the morning from 9 to 12, I'm going to work on this business. Maybe Sunday night from 5 to 9, I'm going to record content for social and type up a couple
Mm-hmm.
tweets and articles for the week. So I
Right.
time block everything so that I don't
Nice.
switch back and forth as much as possible. I don't even check my emails. I
Mm-hmm.
check my emails in the morning, I check
Mm-hmm.
them at lunch, and I check them around 9 o'clock. I'm
Okay.
not actively checking emails throughout the day because I know that there's nothing, because I've already figured out my most important urgent stuff for the day that's
Right.
going to come into my inbox that will be required to be finished by the end of the day.
Right.
So at 9 o'clock, when I check my emails again, I'm going to see what I have to line up for the next day, and that will dictate what I'm focusing on for the next day. But I'm not distracting myself in between writing a proposal or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is
Mm-hmm.
with emails about unrelated things. I really, really focus, and then I'll clear my inbox at the end of the day. So, yeah, time blocking, like all the things that time blocking, doing heavy tasks when you're not distracted,
Right.
preferably in the morning, urgent,
Right.
important. These are all things that I really do truly live. Um, Other things, like, I mean, I'm not perfect. I try not to drink, but I drink every once in a while, but not too often.
Right.
Definitely have not killed the caffeine habit yet, so I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
people deal with that.
Right. Right.
In terms of like health and fitness, there's things that I do as well. So I used to be big into sports, played a ton of sports. Now I just sort of lift weights recreationally, but intermittent fasting,
Mm-hmm.
I cycle carbs so that I maintain like optimal energy levels.
Mm-hmm.
But these are sort of very personal things to me. So I've sort of
Right.
figured out my nutrition, my eating schedule, my workout schedule to like look good, feel good as possible so that I don't hit like afternoon slumps.
Right, right.
So those are kind of the day-to-day things. Outside of that, I'm actively, we'll talk about kids and family in a second because I'm
Right.
actively trying to outsource and build out, and delegate as much as possible so that I sort of claim back hours in my day because I don't have kids yet, but
Right.
that's a goal. And I know that if I'm operating at the way that I'm operating now, I won't be a good father.
No.
So that's
No.
what I know it. I'm very well aware of it. I'm forcing myself to take breaks. I'm forcing
Mhm.
myself to like shut off and go on vacation. These are
Awesome.
things that seem silly, but I haven't taken vacations up until like the past 2 years for like
Hmm.
several years now. And
Right.
for me, I actively have to build that into my schedule
Hmm.
so that my future goals of having a family are more doable because I need
Yeah.
to have the right shut off time. I need to have the right vacation time with the family. I can't be working 24/7. So I know where my goals are at. I'm constructing my life and my schedule to be able to facilitate those goals so that I'm not operating the way I am now when I have kids. I think that's also very important.
Wow. This is you have provided so much value to what you have said because I have some of my listeners. They're in your like
Mhm.
in your status. They just got married. They're about to have kids, or some they haven't been even married. They're not married yet, but now they
Yeah.
have a good idea about how they can do to prepare themselves to become better fathers. And I think from what you're mentioning in terms of you know like when you're creating those blocks and what you do in those blocks is something very neat you mentioned about the 80-20 rule. Maybe briefly, like you can, I know it's pretty much the same thing that you mentioned, but it's a good summary for people to learn. Can you teach them quickly about that one?
Yeah, so the 80-20 rule is also known as the Pareto principle, which
Mm-hmm.
means that 80% of the results comes from 20% of the effort. So ultimately, that is obviously it's a nice thought, but if you start to understand how it applies in your life, it's quite practical. So if you look at, I'll give you a business example.
Mm-hmm.
Every sales team that I led,
Mm-hmm.
there was always 20% of the people driving 80% of the results. When you look at all the different marketing things you're doing in your business,
Mm-hmm.
you're doing a whole bunch of stuff, but like what's really driving revenue for your business? And there's usually a very small fraction that is like the most impactful. I mean, sometimes in some businesses, I'm sure it's more 90-10 than even 80-20.
Right,
But
right.
I think that your goal in life should be to identify those 20% things that drive those 80% results in your life,
Mm-hmm.
in your business. I mean, let's look at a life example. If
Exactly.
I find that like my life is very much an 80-20, like I'm living an 80-20. So
Mm-hmm.
all the health and wellness things I do
Mm-hmm.
is 20% of the things that 20% of the things I do drive 80% of the results. So when I work out, I work on like core lifts that end up having the they will impact my body the most. The
Right.
food I eat, I focus on eating the great stuff for my body, like that. So, for example, the what's the word? So, if I focus on diet, I
Mm-hmm.
focus on the best foods that will create the best possible result for my body as well.
Right.
Um, so most of the stuff that I do in my life, even like the intermittent fasting or the
Right.
carb cycling, those are like strategies that I find
Mm-hmm.
that they're not super time consuming, but they produce the most outcome in my day to day. I don't bother with cutting caffeine. I don't
Mm-hmm.
bother with doing a cold shower, cold plunge every morning. I
Right.
don't bother with this ancillary stuff because I could do it and it could
Mm-hmm.
have marginal returns. But for me, it's more of a lift. I don't enjoy it and I don't see the same results. So if I cold plunge every morning versus going to the gym, I
Mm-hmm.
don't find that the payoff is the same. So I go to
Right.
the gym for an hour versus find a way to do a cold plunge or a cold shower. I don't really find the cold plunge does much for me.
Right.
Um, I mean, that's sort of how I approach everything in life because what's this? What's the quote again? It's like, I think Bill Gates said, if you want a job done, give it to a lazy person because the lazy person will find the most effective way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Candidly, that's how I approach my life because I know that there's a lot of hard work required, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm always looking for a way, and it's not going to be so obvious day one, but I'm
Right.
always looking for a way to do the things
Hmm.
that will have the highest impact with the minimal amount of effort. Now, there's always effort required, of course,
Right.
but
Right.
I think that too many people put a lot of effort on things that have like almost marginal impact.
Right.
So that to me is how I approach. I don't know. That's how I approach sort of my life.
Oh, this is fantastic. I mean, and when you don't know your 20%, I guess it's even worse because you end up spending time on the on a lot of things
Yeah,
that are really just draining your time.
I'm trying to think of other examples. Like so, if you, I think that for example, like I mentioned, like the diet before.
Hmm.
So when you look at feeling good, looking good, the food you eat, there's like a
Right.
million things. Like there's supplements, there's
Hmm.
vitamins, there's minerals. All that stuff is good, and I mean you should definitely get your supplement, your vitamins and whatnot. But I mean
Right.
there's so much extra that
Hmm.
you can try out and you can incorporate into your day to day that
Right.
ultimately maybe they make you feel 1% better or 2%
Hmm.
better. They make you feel 1% more alert or whatever it is.
Right.
But I mean, personally for me, that doesn't make enough of a difference to complicate my routine with those things. I have sort of like my things that I know are staples that have the
Right.
biggest impact on my day to day. That's
Absolutely.
what I like.
Absolutely. And just like the working out, for instance, there's some things, like the core, for instance, you know, like if you do things like squats or
Hmm.
bench or something, those things are like they're needle movers to me. I
Those
feel
are
like
needle movers. That's sorry, that's
yes.
a great example. So we just talk about exercise, right? You want to work out in the gym. You want to have your
Right.
20% of lifts. So you do compound
Right.
movements. So
Right.
bench, squat,
Right.
deadlift. Then you
Right.
have your ancillary movements, but everything should be at least most of the things should be compound.
Right.
Because what can you do? You could do your bench, you could do your dead, you could do your squat.
Right.
I rather do 15 minutes on a stairmaster than 30
Hmm.
minutes or 45 minutes running because I know that also hits my lower body.
Right.
That's to me, it's like that's a 20% activity.
Right.
Um, Now, what you could you do in the gym? I mean, you can curl all day. You can do like little like rope pulling tricep extensions. You can do all the machines in the
Right.
world,
But your
but
core.
ultimately it's not going to have the same payoff as focusing on those three compound lifts and maybe like
Right.
if you did like bench, squat, deadlift plus
Hmm.
weighted pull-ups
Right.
and weighted dips,
Hmm.
like you could build an entire physique off of those five movements.
That's it.
Arguably even just the three core lifts.
Hmm.
But people complicate everything. They do all the things that they see in the in the workout magazines. They do all the things they see the professionals shill on their blogs or on their socials. They
Right.
Google how did so and so look like this for the latest Marvel movie, and then they'll go
Right. Right.
follow this
Hmm.
garbage workout routine. So
Right.
you just cut the fluff in life. Cut the fluff. Focus on what matters.
Right.
That will give you the easiest life
Right.
that you want in anything, in family, in whatever, in fitness, in health, in business. It's like
Right.
cut the fluff, trim the fat,
That's it.
focus on
That's
what
it.
moves the needle.
That's it. And it's like healthcare. A lot of times, get a, like try things.
Hmm.
Like the aging is very important. But also, I notice how, I think I don't know. I have the same, like scenario right now. But I have noticed, like one of the the influencer or somebody was mentioning how you can list a lot of things, maybe like 20 things that you want to do or like your priorities. But then
Hmm.
of those 20, you can maybe narrow down to four or something. And then those
Yeah.
16 is definitely like do not even touch them. They're really horrible for you.
That is, I think that's not even an influencer. That's a Warren Buffett quote, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, there
That
you
is
go.
definitely a Warren Buffett quote.
There you go.
It's like
Okay.
list your 25. I think it's like list your. I think they're trying to steal a Warren Buffett quote. It's like list your
Right.
25
Uh-huh.
highest priority tasks,
Right.
and then list out the five most important out of the list of that 25, and
Right.
then never touch the remaining 20. That is for
That,
sure a Warren Buffett
that's a
quote.
very important. That's a very important code because that's really our life. We end up wasting time with those 20
Yeah.
instead of touching the major five, and the time is running, and we're still complaining. Oh yeah, I'm still not doing it well. But you really have needle movers in front of you, but you don't
Hmm.
spend time on them. So this is a
It's just another version of the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. If you want to, I just Googled it. It's the 5-25 rule. This
Oh, there you
is
go.
Warren Buffett's famous advice for
There you go.
productivity.
That's it. Boom.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome, awesome. So yeah, next time I want I'll definitely remember that because now we have a situation, because a lot of times your memory is better when you have a scenario like this.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Listen, I'm sure a lot of people have ripped that off to some degree, but Warren Buffett is,
Absolutely.
I'll give him the credit.
And as we speak, I think I remember there's somebody that wrote a book and he somehow squeezed that into his book and somehow he took credit from it. I don't want to mention his
I have
name.
no idea.
Yeah. So, anyways, so boss, what do you think so far, in terms of like you have family, with your coworkers and stuff? How do
Hmm.
you deal with, let's say, somebody that wants to deal with a family? Let's say, there's like somebody sick in the family, or
Mm.
they need to take time off. How do you deal with that? And you still have a lot of things to do at your job. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as a rule, a business should be healthy enough to support when people have personal problems, they can take the
Hmm.
time needed to fix that problem. I think that's just a rule. I think that the only time you run into problems is when a business is built so thin that
Hmm.
everybody is maxed out and
Hmm.
nobody can sort of cover or help out. And I don't think that's a very healthy business if
Okay.
you have everybody always working at 150% capacity.
Okay.
Um, I think that, I mean, my my view is if somebody has life events, they
Hmm.
have to tend to life events because life events are more important than business. But also
Absolutely.
simultaneously, I shouldn't have built a business that's
Hmm.
going to crash and burn the second one person has, God forbid, a sick parent or aunt or
Right.
grandparent, right?
Hmm.
I mean, the same goes for not just sick people in their family. What about people that want to take time off for their children, maternity leave, right?
Right.
So a business has to be built so that it's profitable enough
Hmm.
and healthy enough to support
Hmm.
their employees living a life and having a livelihood and dealing with real life. And if you cannot do that, then you're not running a business, you're running a sweatshop. So
Absolutely.
I think that people sometimes think individuals are a commodity and they're not people.
Hmm.
And I think that people, unfortunately, maybe in a pre-COVID world
Hmm.
where individuals did not have the same options as to where they
Hmm.
could work and where they could go to, I think
Right.
people were taken advantage of a lot more. But
Hmm.
what I am happy about is now people have the option to leave and people have the option to work remotely. And if you are in the middle of nowhere, USA,
Right.
and all you have is an internet connection, technically you can work for anybody in the world. And same goes for somebody who's in the middle of nowhere in the rest of the world. They can work for anybody in the USA or globally. So I
Right.
think that now businesses have to be better
Hmm.
because there's so many options, which is a great thing. And it forces businesses to be better, to operate better, to be healthier, to make the money required to support their staff. And I think that
Hmm.
now this is more of the norm where people are expecting the ability to go on sick leave, go on maternity leave, take
Right.
time off. I mean, it's not like the model hasn't been proven. We look at
Right.
Europe,
Right.
people in Europe have whatever, way more, I don't even know, like 6 weeks, 8 weeks vacation, whatever it is, full maternity leave. So, like, you can build a business
Right.
while still valuing the human.
Right.
But I think that for the longest time in the US, we uh, try to get as much out of people as possible with the lowest amount of cost spent on those people,
Hmm.
which, I mean, that's not a good thing, but that was the reality for a period of time. And as
Right.
businesses evolve and grow, and as people understand that they have more options and they have access to other better opportunities, then businesses
Right.
have to evolve with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. I think this is a very good point to the people that are starting and the people that have been established. I'm sure now they know the reality, as you mentioned, that people have more
Hmm.
options now. You know, so Chief, I like what you mentioned earlier about how you liked the idea about family. That you do not like to see people just work, work, work. They learn, they learn how to work, to grow as as an entrepreneur. And then once they spend 10 years or whatever, then they've made it, but they don't know how to get back to create a family. So,
Mm.
like, what do you think about that? Because I think that's one of the challenges that we have right now, right?
So I think a lot of this, where people get lost
Hmm.
on their journey, meaning they start working hard and they progress in their company, or they start a business and it's successful, and they start to put in hours and they start to see returns on those hours,
Mm-hmm.
and then they get lost because we don't actually teach a lot of useful things at a young age. I don't
Yes.
think we teach people what skills are required to be successful. I also don't think we set proper expectations as to the amount of energy and effort required to operate as a, not just a 1%, but like even like a 0.1% of the population, where you see a CEO in a large corporation or an entrepreneur that built $1 billion brand. That's like 0.001 at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we don't do a good job in our formal education system
Mm-hmm.
as well as in our informal education system, meaning the people that teach on YouTube about entrepreneurship, about business.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do a good job of setting expectations about what's required. And I think that if we did a better job of setting expectations about what's required, I think that people could properly understand what they're getting themselves into and not get lost along the way. And I think that when people put everything into a company, they know it's going to be hard work, but they don't get how much work it's going to be. And instead of planning for a period of your life where you can sort of decompress or allocate time to a family purposefully,
Mm-hmm.
they just their personality gets warped because all they know is work.
Right.
And I don't think that's conducive to a healthy relationship if your partner is not on board. I mean, you can have a healthy relationship where you and your partner love work, which is fine.
Right.
But I think
Mm-hmm.
that if you're with somebody and you're starting something and they aren't aware of what it's going to take and you aren't aware of what it's going to take, that leads to a lot of discord, a lot of stress in the relationship. And eventually that's going to cause relationships to break. I mean,
Right.
it happens again and again and again with CEOs on their third wife, and
Right.
the entrepreneurs like divorcing or not spending time with kids because they're working so hard. So I think that the expectation has to be set. I think both partners who are involved in that family unit have to understand what the other person's getting into. They got to be okay with it, because even if you don't want to be, uh, you know, balls to the wall, nonstop working for the rest of your life, know that to create anything worth creating that's meaningful, that's significant, there's going to be a period of your life where it's going to be very hard. So understand that, be okay with that, but then also have a plan for when you're going to stop that and when you're going to
Right.
invest in your family and when you're going to
Right.
sort of build that time into your schedule. Because if not, you can always find time to
Mm-hmm.
work more, right? Like the
Right.
work expands the time you give it. And if you don't give family and spouse and children the time they require, then work will fill those gaps. So right now, like I just mentioned what I'm doing in my life, I'm actively working at carving out blocks of time in my life, because I know that if I have a kid now, I mean, I can work from 7 in the morning to midnight. Like I'll find stuff to do, right? So I have to find a way to not find stuff to do. And that means that I'm purposely building a life that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't require me to work 7 in the morning till midnight. And my life, even now, I don't have to do it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a hobby, it's a habit. I enjoy it. So I find ways to fill that time. So I got to sort of like get in the right headspace so that I can be there and be present for a family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people jump into entrepreneurship not understanding what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
sort of become accustomed to this workload because that's what creates success, and then that
Right.
success is like this drug that we understand that the only way we got to where we're at is by putting in 12-hour days, so how can we ever stop?
Right.
And it's not a healthy headspace to be in, so we have to find a way to stop, to reprogram ourselves so that we're better suited to be present and to be there for our family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough because entrepreneurship and high performers, usually they operate in silos. Like
Right.
usually the entrepreneur that builds the billion-dollar company, I mean, they're not coming from parents that built billion-dollar companies,
Right.
and they're not, maybe they have some friends, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
not all their friends have built
Right.
billion-dollar companies, and not all their friends, and maybe the ones that they have out of all their friends, maybe they haven't built a successful family. So I think that it's important to sort of surround yourself with positive role models
Mm-hmm.
that see work and family in the way that you want to see it.
Right.
And then those are the people that are going to give you the best advice. And those are the people that are going to call you out when you are spending time with your kids. Those are the best friends. So, I mean, you could do a little bit of work yourself. I think it's also important to, again, surround yourself with people that
Right.
are living the life you want to live, not just financially, not just via work or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
also with their spouse, happy marriage, happy
Right.
partner, happy
Right.
kids. while simultaneously performing at a certain level and achieving that success, those are the people that you have to include in your life, so that those are the role models that you look to. Because if not, then you're just trying to figure it out yourself. And unless you go through this thought process and exercise about how do I manage my work and my life, it just, good things don't happen by accident.
Right.
So if you don't take the time to think through it and to purposefully build a family and to set time aside, I feel like, unfortunately, there's a chance it could just end in chaos and
Right.
hurt feelings and broken relationships, and
Absolutely.
with your spouse, with your kids, with everyone. So I think that that's, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a dad, so
Right. Right.
I hesitate to give
No.
all the advice in
No.
the world,
No.
but I'm
I
trying to give as much that makes sense.
absolutely. I think you touched something very important, and this is something that we can talk on, in another time, that, or maybe even create a way to advise folks, I guess, or maybe create a group of people that have gone through it. Because you
Mm,
see, like for instance, one of our mutual friend JLE, for instance, he's been going through that, and I think now they're expecting. So I think one great thing, my friend, that I can advise you, do your best to being there. I know that you've started this idea of creating the time. This is perfect.
hmm
The next thing is also to intentionally be there, like in terms of the appointments and stuff like this with your wife down the road. You know, just being there is the best thing you can do as a dad, and that's already in your plans. So I
hmm
think you're on the right foot, my friend.
I appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So really, we have touched a lot of things, and here at Dad Puzzles, I think today you have given them so much value
Thank
that
you, man. I
I don't want
appreciate
to
it.
bore you with anything else, my friend. I think at that point, at this point, maybe like you can say the best memory of the fondest memory of your dad, the fondest memory of your dad.
My fondest memory of my dad.
Yes.
My dad, I mean, my dad's still alive, thank God.
Right.
So it's not like
Right.
it's
Right. No,
not
no,
like the
and so
memories
far,
of it.
so far, so far. Like so far,
Yeah,
you just interacting with him and stuff. There's
I
nothing
think.
bad.
Yeah, I think that I, my dad supported almost every silly, ridiculous thing I ever wanted to be involved in, and I'm actually very
Awesome.
blessed for that.
Awesome.
I know that I'm very, very fortunate to have parents that were not only able to afford, but like actually actively supported. So,
Mhm.
like, he was the one. I played a lot of hockey. Again, Canadian. I played a lot of hockey growing up. So he was the
Right.
one, like, you know, weekend mornings driving me to the rink at God knows what time. I
Mhm.
was like half asleep, and he was getting my ass out of bed so that we'd actually get to the practice or the game on time. He'd be going to
Right.
all the out of town tournaments, but it wasn't just like sports. I mean, I'm sure that cost a fair amount, but all the
Mhm.
equipment and the fees and whatnot. But then it was like,
Right.
I remember I wanted to learn how to play the drums, and he'd find a pair of drums or whatever, and I was,
Nice.
living at my parents' house playing drums, and I can't imagine that was fun
The
either, listening
noise.
to that
Yeah.
shit. And then like also all the times, like, even through all that, when I was
Mhm.
growing up in high school,
Right.
and I mean, we can drink a little bit younger in Canada, so all the times, you show up home drunk, and
Right. Right.
and he's just like, oh, you're an idiot, Scott, whatever, go to bed,
Right.
like all those
Mhm.
things. Like, it's
Mhm.
like it truly is like what's the word, like, uh
So,
the love, but I mean, like, I'm blanking on the word right now, just
like
like
unconditional love.
unconditional love, the
Mhm.
unconditional love and the
Mhm.
absolute support in all the most
Mhm.
ridiculous things that I ever wanted to try.
Right.
So that's like what I remember most. Hopefully he listens to this one day. I don't know. I think he listens to some of my stuff on YouTube. I have no idea if he listens to the podcast. We'll see. But
No,
maybe I'll
no,
send
this
him
one
this
is a
one.
YouTube as well. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so I have the connection in Canada as well. My wife is from Montreal, so
Oh,
if
so
I knew
I mean, yeah, yeah, for sure.
like if I knew your whereabouts, I'll definitely, like share this info.
Yeah, well, now I'm in Florida, so now
Oh,
I'm
there
in a
you go.
much warmer spot. But
Okay.
Montreal is 2 hours from where I grew
Right.
up. In
Right.
Ottawa, we used to, like, you could go, because Montreal, I think, yeah. So Ottawa, you could drink when I mean, Canada,
Mhm.
outside of Quebec, Montreal, you can drink when you're 19, and
Mhm.
then Quebec, you can drink when you're 18. So we used to
Mhm.
go on, like, I mean, we could walk across a bridge when we're 18 and grab a
Right.
drink. And we used to go on, like, weekend trips to Montreal as well to go to
Right.
clubs and whatnot when we were 18,
Right.
19. So
Right.
you're
Right.
pretty young and you're going on these trips, but it was a lot of
Right.
fun. Montreal's a great city. Good food
Yeah.
in Montreal too, but cold as
Yeah.
hell in the winter.
The Montreal, Canada, like
Yeah, the hockey
the
team.
hockey team.
Yeah,
Yes, yes, yes. Awesome,
yeah.
Chief. It's been really a pleasure being with you today here, and I really look forward to us touching base again down the road. You know. I hope to hear some like great news soon and stuff like that.
Yes,
Yes,
we
sir.
will.
Yes,
We
sir.
will. I
Thanks so
appreciate you
much.
a lot,
Thank you
man.
so much. I appreciate your time today. So, guys, please go ahead and how can people find you, like Scott? What's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, I'm super easy to find.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the social is the same. It's
Mm-hmm.
at Scott D Clary. So
Mm-hmm.
Scott D Clary or scottdclary.com, and you can
Awesome.
find me there.
Fantastic, fantastic. So thank you guys. This will be posted, like on YouTube pretty soon, and you have the podcast to any of your, the podcast of your choice. Don't forget to give us 5 stars so that other people can be able to see it. Like find it and stuff, so they can gain all this valuable wisdom and knowledge from our special guest. Thank you again, boss.
Thank you so
Let me
much.
stop here 1 second. Let me stop here.